Good morning, folks, and welcome to another Rio and Raw conversation. This time we'll tackle one of the most controversial political moves of the current year, the recognition of the Palestinian state by the UK, Canada, Portugal, and a few other nations. So we would like to answer this question. Has the West just taken a step towards peace, or, as many argue, they just rewarded the wrong side? So to answer this question, or to go through it, I have first my co-host, Marco Alexandra, who is diving in directly from Jerusalem. And in a few minutes, perhaps 10, we will have Rachel O'Donnell, which is a journalist and an analyst, to break down this topic and see how was this decision covered in the media and what's the impact on public opinion. But this is not just the three of us. We want you to be on the chat. I already throw a question to you guys, and I would like you to provide us with your answer. So do you believe this decision rewards the wrong side or helps move things forward? So put your thoughts on the question, and we'll pick it along the way. And also, if you know someone who is into the topic, make sure to share. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'll be very thankful if you can. If you enjoy what we do here, just let us know by clicking the like button below. Marco, Boker Tov to you.
Boker Tov from the land of Israel, from Jerusalem. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad for a Friday.
Good.
Let me know, just before we get into the UK, because I know Rachel has a lot to say, and you too, what's happened in Italy over the last few days, because I didn't pay a lot of attention because, there's plenty on my plate, Jewish holidays and all that. I'm sure because of your Italian connections, you were in touch with the reality in a way I was not. So if you can share, I think everyone will benefit of your insights.
Well, with regard to Israel, we've had some attacks from the Houthis, where a number of people were seriously injured as a result of the drone attack. Israel retaliated in quite a heavy manner. Initial reports say that hundreds of terrorists have been eliminated in the Yemen. So that's basically on the war front, on that front rather. What's been happening in Gaza, the penetration into Gaza City is continuing. So that's basically a summary of the main battlefronts, or rather the kinetic battlefronts, because of course, as you well understand, Israel is involved on a number of fronts and a widening series of fronts, as we're going to discuss today, with the recognition by the Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, of the state of Palestine, a state which doesn't exist, which he has decided in his wisdom to recognize. Bear in mind that Mr. Starmer does have a problem recognizing the difference between a man and a woman, so I wouldn't set too much store by what he does. Nevertheless, it is a pernicious act by this gentleman.
Yeah, like there was some precedents from this man that kind of went in that direction, that he will have to be part of a group recognizing a state, as you said, that it doesn't have borders, it doesn't have a proper government. They are not even together as a group, but it looks good, to come up with that move for PR. Although I have a feeling that the cultural war is changing, and perhaps in a way that the likes of Keir Starmer were not expecting. I think there is a massive discontent among real people, and that perhaps will be reflected in the elections and in some political consequences pretty soon. But for the time, they are holding the fort, and they believe they will be in charge for quite some time. So they still believe that they are the ones telling us what we should believe, what are things that we should support. But I believe that at some point, like figures like Keir Starmer, who is not exactly, let's say, far left person, he's more of a globalist or a careerist kind of politician. I believe that if he needs to do a move to uh, um, regain the public trust, and that move involves certain behaviors and views of the world that are not the current, I think he would, because he's not the kind of guy who would stick to his view of society. He's more of a chameleon. Do you have the same understanding as I have?
No, I to be frank, in this sense, I think he is out of orbit. I don't think he has any credibility, not even with the people who voted for him. So I think he's in very deep trouble. He thinks he can get out of trouble by pandering to his Islamist Palestinist constituency, but I think he will find that this wasn't a very wise choice.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just the polls, and because the polls they are what they are. They are not always accurate. There are a lot of sensationalism around those numbers. I think it's more about the feeling that you see on social media. And I know that we need to be very careful, because there are echo chambers in X, there are echo chambers in Blue Sky, echo chambers all over the place. But is less and less a figure that it's perceived as charismatic or trustworthy, which are crucial for a politician to succeed. You need to somehow transmit the feeling that you know what you are doing, and that's not the case with him. If you, let's say, if you would be leading a boat, you would think that this boat is about to sink. So you don't want that. You want to like,
no, he doesn't inspire
in the States, a
confidence
bit
in the
different.
least. Yeah.
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of discontent even in the Labour Party itself, but I'm not sure they have anybody in any case who can get the ship on an even keel. So the Labour Party, I believe, are in trouble. They've lost credibility, much as the Conservative Party has lost credibility. Yeah. With regard to Israel, however, if we want to sort of delve into relations between the UK and Israel, I think we can look to something which a headline which appeared in the Telegraph, that Keir Starmer was tying in some way recognition of this Palestinist entity with the curtailing, or that is the stopping of the pay for slay policy which the Palestinians have, whereby Palestinians who murder Jews their family receive a salary. So this is a very important element with which we can sort of have a look at British policy throughout the years. It is, in fact, a tacit admission that Britain has been financing terrorism for at least 40 years. When he says that, basically he's let the mask slip, and it bears unwitting testimony to the fact that Britain has since 1996 been financing a terrorist entity to the tune of $2 billion. So I think this is very important to mention. And we have to fix it within a wider context of British policy in the Mandate period and in the War of Independence period up until the present day. There are several elements which I would like to draw people's attention to. And I think we need to separate sentiment among decent British people and fair-minded British people, which I think the British people are amongst the most decent and fair-minded, and separate it from the elites and the governing class. With regard to relations between Britain and the Jewish people, both during the Mandate period and subsequent to the Mandate period, we have to look at a series of elements that should be borne in mind. So we see that's what is happening now with the recognition of this Palestinist entity is not really an aberration, because during the 1930s, and in fact shortly after Britain gets the Mandate, policy towards the Jews changes. Attitudes change very quickly. We see measures to curtail immigration into the land of Israel start very soon. In 1922, we have the first of a series of white papers and restrictive measures, which ultimately would prevent the Jewish people from escaping Nazi Europe. So this has to be borne in mind when we consider British policy towards the Jews. We also have to bear in mind that subsequent to the, or rather, when the British withdraw from Mandate Palestine, they effectively take the Arab side. Israel, the nation state of Israel, was not only fighting the surrounding Arab countries, it was also fighting Britain. The British basically manned the general staff of the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, and they armed the Egyptians to the teeth. And they were well aware that there was an attempted genocide against the Jews. This is something they were well aware of. They understood full well what was going on. It should be borne in mind that the British serving in the Royal Jordanian Army were in constant contact with the Foreign Office. Okay. The Hashemite army was also responsible for a series of massacres, and these massacres happened with British staff manning some of the most important positions in the Jordanian army. Fortunately for Israel, it wins the war, thus avoiding a second genocide within the space of 15 years. Britain was also one of two countries to recognize the illegal occupation of Judea and Samaria, known to most people as the West Bank. So one has to bear in mind all these elements when we consider British recognition of the so-called, or rather I call it the Palestinian state, which basically entails that the corollary of this is that we see a further Palestinization and Islamization of British society. Clearly, they want to attract Arab investment, and they're hoping for this windfall to relaunch the British economy. But of course, for the ordinary British person, it will entail increasing Islamization and pandering to an Islamist agenda. So I think it's very important to give this overall picture and to understand that British recognition here is not an aberration. It is something quite consistent. There were very few high points in Anglo-Israeli relations. On the other hand, one must bear in mind that prior to the mandate and during the mandate, there were some great British figures, personalities who were involved in a very positive way with the Zionist endeavor. Also anteceding this period, Lord Shaftesbury, he also argued in favor for restoring the Jewish presence to the land of Israel. But overall, it's not a very pretty picture with regard to Anglo-Israeli and Anglo-Jewish relations.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the context, Marco. I think it's very helpful for people to link the dots, especially because this information is not very easily accessible these days. So it's important that you raise those points and people can use them to make their own mind on this complex topic. So I will bring in Rachel. Rachel, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's lovely to, well, actually it's my afternoon, but your morning.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely to see you both.
I'm a bit behind. Good to see you. So Rachel is a senior editor in Honest Reporting, which is a news portal that I can only recommend for those who are not aware. Make sure to check it out after the podcast. I think you learn a lot about global affairs, especially when Israel is involved, and Rachel provides a lot of clarity on a bunch of topics. So yeah, just my encouragement. Rachel, from your journalist perspective, how was the decision of recognizing Palestine framed in the UK media?
Obviously, it always depends on who you read. Interestingly, though, I think there was when we see from the likes of the BBC, it was obviously framed as a sort of wonderful thing, but actually reading some of the newspaper editorials that were put out, in particular in the Times, the Telegraph, I did see clarity there, which was journalists saying, look, this is performative, it's ridiculous. What are the new borders states? Who's governing it? Who's going to enforce these elections that Starmer has apparently said must happen? These were questions that we did see raised, and that was actually positive, because it's good to know that there are that the view, at least among those who understand the issues, is realizing that it doesn't work.
Just before I pass the word to Marco, I'm curious to understand if you believe that there is a shift in the news narrative, or there's something else for not just painting this recognition as something pinkish.
Is that for me the question, or for Rachel?
Rachel can answer, and then we can move to. I know, Marco, you are eager to give an answer, but if you don't mind, yeah.
Do I think there has been a shift, as in since the start of the war? Perhaps. I think there was a kind of inevitability, I think, about this. At least I thought this was likely to happen, and the media obviously plays a role in this. How the media has presented this war and have become increasingly hostile toward Israel, I think that has obviously, it is influencing political decisions, at least on some level. I don't think that, all of this, I think the media coverage has impacted, and definitely even social media as well, of course, more so, has impacted how young people understand these protests that have taken place across European cities. And politicians can be a bit knee-jerk when it comes to these things. And they do, or are left with the impression that the British public are overwhelmingly in support of recognition of Palestinian statehood. And I think if polls are to be believed, actually it's a bit more mixed. I think most people don't really care, actually, in the United Kingdom. So that's my view.
Yeah, just it doesn't really change their day-to-day life. Information is still there. Streets are not safe as they used to. So
yes,
it's just for the optics. Marco, over to you.
No, I think there is a perceptible change in the way people view things. I think people are beginning to join the dots with regard to Palestinianism and beginning to recognize that it is something fictitious. It is a means whereby Britain can be Islamified. I think they understand there is, and that one cannot fail to see, there is a process of Islamification within Britain around which all these people rally. I mean, the Palestinian flag is something is ever present. So basically, that has become the flag of both overt kinetic jihad and stealth jihad, and people are beginning to see a change. Their eyes are opening now. They see a change in the landscape, and they don't like what they see, and they're beginning to ask questions. They're beginning to ask questions about, is this stuff really true? Have we been really told the full story? Have we been lied to? Has a pernicious narrative been practiced upon us? They're beginning to ask these questions. I think it's quite pronounced in Britain, less so in Italy, another country with which I have strong connections. It still hasn't happened in Italy, but in Britain, indeed in Ireland, we're seeing that things are beginning to change. Why should the country be flooded with alien culture, which is dissolving the social fabric of a country? Why should we be disinherited of what is ours? people are beginning to ask these questions. They're beginning to understand that they cannot take things for granted any longer. And if they don't act, they lose everything. They'll wake up one morning in a different country, in a foreign country.
Are you sure, though, that they make this connection to the Palestinian issue? Because I understand that, and there is a feeling in the UK that a certain process of Islamization is well, I actually have to say, well and truly in quite an advanced stage. However, I wonder if sometimes that connection is made up. And I'll actually give an example that's got nothing to do with Palestinians. And it was actually during some years ago, and it was when there was a large migration of people after Germany had said it would be relaxing its kind of border policies, and there were a huge movement. And the body of a young, was he Kurdish boy, that washed up on a beach, and it sort of made headlines in the United Kingdom.
Yes, I remember that instance. Yes,
and this was sort of used as evidence
Indeed.
for why why the United Kingdom is failing, why it should take in more refugees.
Right.
And it was thinking, the fact that the body of a little child, in the same way that this happens in, as we see in Gaza Strip,
Indeed.
the deaths of children exploited to, and it's quite successful. This did lead to a groundswell in support in opening up borders to people that were not little 3-year-old Kurdish boys. They were, by and large,
and I think that's
men.
perfectly, you make a very good observation there. And I think that reinforces the point that I've been making, that people are beginning to believe they have been fooled for many years. I believe that you make that point. I think that gives emphasis to what I've been saying. Why in every demonstration in Britain do we see the ubiquitous flag? People see, but people realize that people see what's happening in public spaces where you have mass prayer gatherings. Which flag do you see? Which is the ever-present flag at these mass gatherings, these prayer meetings, these iftar meals? Which is the flag that you see?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Marco, you mentioned the social fabric and Ireland. I don't know how much you have been checking the Irish news, but in the end of the month, I can't remember another day, like last week of October, there will be elections for presidency here in Ireland, and we are confined to 3 candidates. I don't know which one is worse, but perhaps is none of them is good. So that's easy. It's an easier assessment, but I know which one is the worst, and I will tell it here out loud. It's Catherine Connolly, and I'm not advertising for her. And she mentioned on an interview that she believes that Hamas is part of the social fabric of Palestine. And even people among the left walked away from her.
Right. But probably she said something quite truthful.
Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Unwittingly, perhaps an unintentional.
Perhaps she's correct.
Yeah.
But unconsciously she made a good point, or for once.
Yes.
But the most outrageous thing about it is this person, she's not a favorite, thank God. But according to the polls, around, I think, 15% are in favor of her being the president going forward. And we're talking about someone who is justifying war crimes, who are justifying a massacre. So yes, people are waking up, but there are still a good few who didn't realize what's going on. And that's
but she's
scary.
in good company,
15%...
Vitor. She is in good company. You have to bear in mind that all the European countries, Britain included, have been financing a terror organization for years, namely the PA. The pay-for-slay policy could not have been possible without financing from European countries. Now, Keir Starmer let it slip the other day that he was stating as a condition that this policy had to stop. So hence we have a tacit admission that Britain has been financing a terror organization. Now that's nothing new, as I mentioned prior to Rachel joining the conversation. Britain for years has followed a Palestinist policy. Indeed, even during the period of the Wars of Independence, effectively the general staff of the Jordanian army was British. Okay, they were reporting to the Foreign Office. The British armed the Egyptians to the teeth. Not to mention the mandate period, where a series of white papers excluded or prevented Jews from escaping war-torn Europe. So this isn't an aberration. Unfortunately, we have as Jews for many a year, we've lived in a fool's paradise. We've been very naive.
I mean, I would absolutely agree with that point. And I suppose actually his admission on the paper slay, it really revealed, I suppose, how supine these European leaders are. The very idea that Hamas is going to listen to whatever Keir has said and lay down its weapons, or the
Indeed.
PA is going to stop its paper slay policy tomorrow. Hamas will agree to no role in a future Palestinian state, or indeed that the Palestinians will vote in general and fair elections, not for another Hamas.
Indeed.
This is absurd.
It is.
So,
it is a theatre of the absurd. You're perfectly right.
Yes.
You're perfectly right.
And I suppose we have to accept that none of these conditions will be met. What will Starmer do is, when is his deadline? September. What happens then? Does Starmer just reveal that everyone in the region is ignoring him? Does he? It's genuinely interesting to see what will happen next with regard to that, because I think he may have to. My prediction is potentially Israel could do a couple of, again, they'd be quite performative. Israel can go, oh, well, you know, we'll pause a bit of settlement building for the meanwhile. That will be enough of a sort of concession for Starmer, where he can then go, well, okay, so Israel has agreed to do X, Y, and Z, and therefore we'll row back with this recognition, because he knows that it's a complete impossibility. And I suspect, of course, if Israel wanted to show him up, they would do absolutely nothing, continue on their merry way, and put the ball squarely into these European leaders' courts and show them up for the embarrassments, weak embarrassments that they are.
But you know, Rachel, it is to the detriment of the native populations. This is what people really need to understand, because what Starmer and his friends are hoping for is a windfall of Arab investment, which will lead to further Islamification of Britain, because that won't happen for nothing. The Arabs, the Arab powers, because they have conditioned British policy for the past 40 years. I can remember articles, I believe in the Jewish Chronicle, where Jewish students were complaining of being harassed by Muslims 40 years ago on university campuses. Does that resonate with you, Rachel? Because I remember, I'm a bit older than you, of course, by 1 year or two, that Jewish students were being harassed 40 years ago, and that very much coincided with the poisoning of the academic system in the UK. Of course, the academic system in the UK never hesitates to engage ostensibly Israeli anti-Israel academics. They find a very cozy environment. I'm sure you're fully aware of these academics as well. So something very sinister has been happening for a very long time, and there's no reason to suppose for this not to continue, or indeed for it to be reinvigorated by this policy. Yes,
I would agree. I don't think it's going to get better. I mean, my view was probably long before this that the UK's demographics in that regard do not make for positive reading. And if you've ever gone to certain boroughs of London, it makes for grim walking around, and
Indeed.
You think, I can't quite believe I'm in the UK's capital city right now. So maybe this will simply hasten the inevitable, but I believe it was going in that direction anyway.
On the good side, people are beginning to wake up. We see these demonstrations, which were downplayed by the British media. I think it was pretty obvious that they tried to diminish the figure at the London demonstration a couple of weeks ago. What's your opinion on that, Rachel?
Yes, I'm sure they did. I wasn't. What was the demonstration? It was sort of led by Tommy Robinson. And a couple of other people. Look, I don't know all too much about that demonstration. I imagine it was downplayed by the media. So many are. All I had to do was look at the photos actually and think, well, there's got to be more than however many they put. 50,000, I believe, was one that I read, and I said, but I can quite literally see that there is far more than 50,000. So I think the media has a tendency to do that. That's it. Yes.
Yeah, so it was not only the UK, but other countries also recognized the so-called Palestinian state, including my own Portugal, and which was, I wouldn't say it was shocking, but it revealed what kind of government is in charge of Portugal now. And just to give viewers a brief timeline, so our government, who is meant to be center-right, said in June that they would recognize the Palestinian state if these three conditions are met. And I'm going to throw these three clauses just to see if they were met or not. I don't think they were. First is Hamas will put down their weapons, not at all. Second, the PLO will recognize Israel, not even near. And third, the release of the hostage. Maybe since June, I can't remember, maybe one or two were released, but I don't even remember that since June. And all of a sudden, these three conditions were not relevant anymore. So we're talking about governments who publicly confirmed that they would stick to those three conditions, and all of a sudden, just because there was a wave of acceptance, they decided to set aside their position in June and go with the flow. Just be part of a massive acceptance just for the optics. So this I think this opens a very dangerous precedent, because if now they can just acknowledge the recognition of Palestine when Hamas is still actually killing their own citizens and attacking Israel with missiles from time to time, if the PLO is still hostile towards Israel, if the hostages are still in the tunnels, like these things are not being taken seriously, and it's very, very dangerous, especially because we know that the politicians are talking to each other in the EU, in the UN gatherings. So I'm sure there'll be other countries in pipeline that are going to accept. I wouldn't be surprised if even some Central Eastern Europeans will adopt that position. For instance, in Slovenia, I think Netanyahu is now considered a warmonger. So I don't know where he's safe these days.
The United States, I don't think is anywhere close to recognition of a Palestinian state, or the creation of a Palestinian state. I mean, it's as you say, it's most of this is sort of vote grabbing. I know that, for example, Keir Starmer is in a difficult position. The majority of his MPs, over 200 MPs that had signed a letter saying that one must be recognized, and he is hanging on for political life in the UK. And we need to understand the backdrop in which these things have occurred. I mean, it's similar with Macron, who kind of led the way on this, again, is in a difficult position politically. And it wouldn't be the first time big things like this, what they've attempted to do, to draw attention away from basic failures in governance at home and in the UK, whether it's the economy. There's a budget that's coming in the next month or so, and they are receiving a lot of heat, a lot of criticism. Keir Starmer may not see out the year as Prime Minister if political predictions are to be believed. So I think we also run the risk of maybe overstating the significance of this, is what I think. And sometimes, as I said, what will happen in September when this deadline, we might find that in those couple of months that some of these have quietly backed away from this and won't, and because they understand. So that, you know, I think that we should be careful not to overstate the importance of this. It's as we say, it's I can't remember who used that term, performative, but that is exactly what it is. Nothing more, nothing less.
Rachel, just on British politics, I was just thinking here. I think the previous prime minister, they didn't last even a year in the UK. Liz Truss, I can't remember who was before her. How come Keir Starmer is tied to power? You know, this much. Is there someone backing him? Is there any structure that I'm not aware of? Because he's he's under so much pressure and criticism, but he's still there, and it doesn't seem to be gone any soon.
I believe this is to do with the party rules, actually, about replacing a leader and indeed a prime minister, the sort of vote of no confidence in what would be required, which is a certain majority, and the fixed term elections. So Labour, however, whether or not Keir Starmer is replaced, there won't be another election for a few years. So it's I'm not actually that au fait with Labour Party rules. You'd probably have to go to someone who's ever voted Labour. That might help.
Yeah, that would be quite of a challenge to have a Labour Party vote in this podcast, but we'll do our best.
I have not. So yes,
we'll do our best. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll come up with a debate kind of format. If there is a brave individual able to
absolutely.
debate with us, we'll make it happen.
Yes,
Marco,
yes.
I know I'm not turning to you as a Labour voter, just for clarity, but
good. Yes,
to talk. Huh?
Strangely enough, there were normal people in the Labour Party 50 years ago. I mean, notwithstanding socialism, there were people who had their heads screwed on. I mean, you had Harold Wilson, James Callaghan, Dennis Healy. These were people who you could classify and place them in the normal sphere. Now who spoke excellent English. They were people of a certain cultural level. Now they're basically a bunch of illiterates in every sense of the word, with cognitive dysfunctions. You did have worthy people in the Labour Party. Now it's a very different world. What do you think, Rachel?
Yes, I would agree. One only has to look at the cabinet and think, gosh, whether it's in between Rachel from accounts, David Lammy, who I'm fairly certain couldn't even point out Israel on a map. In fact, I would recommend anyone go and look at David Lammy's mastermind appearance to understand who we have in the cabinet. Oh, gosh. No, you're utterly correct.
It's unreal, isn't it, Rachel? It's unreal. It seems like something from a comedy film or one of those sort of 60s parody. Do you remember Superman in the 1960s, where there were all these larger-than-life characters, the Penguin Man and all these people? You know, it seems surreal to that level. When you look at, not that the Conservative Party is much better.
No, I think the Conservative Party has sort of been consigned to utter irrelevance now.
Yeah.
I believe there could be a Nigel Farage as Prime Minister at some point. If, as you say, Marco, that people are waking up, that's what will happen.
I hope it for Britain. I'm confident in Israel. I will still be here. I worry more about Great Britain than I do about Israel, to be honest.
Here. I'm more worried for the future of Europe than I am for the country that's at war right now.
Isn't it strange?
It really
That's
is.
very telling. Huh? If I'm more concerned with Europe than with the country that is at war, I think that's revealing. Actually, I remember when we met, Marco, in June. One of the first things you told me is, so you are here now for 2 hours. Can you sense that we are at war? I said, not at all, not at all. You'll never imagine there's a war happening just next door. Of course, I mean, if you talk to people, the topic will be part of the conversation. But when it comes to interactions on the surface, there are no signs. And I know I think I'm quite good at paying attention to the vibe, at sensing the atmosphere. But no, there are no evident indications that the country is at war. That's remarkable. Let alone the economy. The economy is up and running. It's functioning. Of course, there are scars here and there because that's inevitable. But from a generic point of view, it's an example, and perhaps we, in Europe, should learn from it. But I think Europeans are very negative and pessimistic. We are not really action orientated, and there's a lot that we could obtain if we pay attention to Israel and the states to an extent, because the states are always under stress, but the ball is always rolling. We are not like that in Europe. Do you have the same understanding, Rachel, when it comes to the UK?
Yes, that is probably true. That said, I don't know. Whenever change this French labor law is potentially going to be made, the French are very good at rioting on the streets of Paris. So I don't know. I think that life has been very good in Europe for a while, and I think it's always seemed like a certain for many people, and I think that's why. But I do believe that is changing, and more I think people are seeing that both because obviously a lot of this is linked to the economy, and I don't think that the UK's current model is sustainable, and I think that will cause discontent when eventually the UK will be forced to cut its public sector and cut its benefits bill because it simply can't afford it. And when that happens, I don't know what we'll see. But it won't be pretty. But maybe on the other side it will be. Who knows?
Yes, complacency, I believe, is the worst enemy of a society, isn't it, to a great extent? The complacency in taking things for granted.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. Let me add something here on the Irish context, just for the upcoming election. So, as I said, there are 3 individuals running for office, and they're all center or center-left. And the reason is the so-called conservatives that they try to come up with a candidate, and they couldn't, because for this person to be able to pursue his or her journey, in case her, because it was a lady, they had to get 20 approvals from the TDs or the council. So there was someone who tried. Her name is Maria Steen. She got 18 out of 20, and that tells how Ireland is struggling to find an alternative voice here. This is not to say that she'll be the right person to run the country. It's just to tell that a fraction of the population is not represented in the elections, and that's a concern, even from a diverse of opinions point of view. We want everyone to have the chance to express themselves in the elections. This is not representative. On the other hand, I think the conservatives did a very bad job. That needs to be said. If they cannot make it, they cannot make it. These are the rules of the elections. I know they are crying, saying, "Oh, this is not fair. This sort of dictatorship." No, these are the rules. They knew about it. And they need to somehow come up with a candidate who is able to persuade the TDs and the council members to give their green light. If they fail, they failed. Sometimes we also need to criticize our own tribe, because I see a lack of self criticism in certain aspects, in certain groups of the right, and that needs to be taken under consideration. Like, it's not just about moaning about what others are doing. We need to improve ourselves. So, I want to send that message, and the same to the states. It's like when I saw Tucker Carlson taking advantage of a microphone to say some anti-Semitic remarks when it was all about Charlie Kirk, that's a complete disgrace. This shouldn't happen. So I just want to tell the viewers that you are here exercising critical thinking, and it doesn't matter who is the target. We will express it.
Well, I think with Tucker Carlson, what do we always say? It's follow the money, and who stumped up the cash for Tucker Carlson to get his own show running, except for Qatar.
Of course.
Can you shed any light on that, Rachel? I'm not quite.
It was just something I was reading. I was reading this morning. So actually, his initially it was an Arab businessman who I believe stumped up the initial funding for his media venture, and he has been well paid by the Qataris. Hence the interview that he did with these. Who was it that he was interviewing? Qatari Prime Minister. So. And I imagine with a lot of these anti-Semites, I think if we had copies of their accounts, we will find who is giving lots of money.
Rachel, I have to correct you there. They're not anti-Semites; they're just anti-Zionists. Isn't it serious though? Isn't it an absurd proposition? It's like saying I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm just anti-synagoguist or anti-kosherist. They don't realize the absurdity of what they're saying. And this is I find it's very amusing, of course, but it just shows you the cognitive collapse of these people. It's quite extraordinary. An anti-synagoguist, Vitor, remember that. You're not an anti-Semite, you're just an anti-synagoguist or an anti-kosherist.
It is fairly absurd. And frustrating that you need to always point this out, that the reason there's never been a Palestinian state is not because they won't accept a Jewish one. It's not if it was just anti-Zionism, why do synagogues in Europe need armed security?
Indeed. And you repeat the same logical argument, and there's no way of engaging with the logical sphere of these. But you repeated there was no Palestinian state, there was no Palestinian identity, they weren't pining for an ancient religious state in a geographically bounded area. It doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me throw a question to the two of you, as you are based in Israel. So let's imagine that Netanyahu is replaced by Lapid. I don't know, 2020. I'm not wishing that. Huh? I'm not wishing that. So let's imagine. I'm not saying
you want to.
It's not a dream.
Really.
It's not a nightmare. It's just a situation. Huh? I'm being as neutral as I can.
A thought experiment, you want to say? It's a
thought experiment. Exactly.
I'd call it a thoughtless experiment.
Even my cat ran away with that idea.
Indeed.
He was scared, and
he'd prefer to be a stray now. You've consigned him.
So let's imagine that's reality. I know we won't be very happy with it, the three of us. I know that, but could that help Israel clean up the country's image? Let's say in Europe and in the States, having a center-left prime minister, or it won't make any difference?
No, it wouldn't. If the Israeli prime minister still believes that the state of Israel should exist, I think that's going to be a problem for many of these people. So I frankly, it wouldn't matter who was in office. I obviously that's an incredibly unlikely scenario. It'd be interesting if that did happen. I wouldn't like to comment on the Israeli political My views, I think, are probably, I have quite conservative opinions, even in Israel, and I try not to alienate some of the more liberal viewers who might live here. So, Marco, please answer.
But you've already it's implicit that you've alienated them already.
But I didn't say how conservative I was.
I know. I'm just having a little fun. Yair Lapid, would Israel be even more loved? Well, listen. There would be more delegations certainly coming to Israel. There'd be more cocktail parties. There'd be more soirees. That's certainly. But at the end of the day, there is an agenda. People aren't really that happy. I mean, certain people, that a Jewish state exists. It's a problem for them. They have a problem getting their head around this. When the notion of a nation state is dissolving around the world, certainly among the elites, the fact that a nation state par excellence exists in the Middle East isn't the nicest of propositions for these people. Okay? So generally, that's my view. Lapid, I mean, aside from the fact that I can't really see somebody like Lapid getting elected, of course, we did have the strange phenomenon of Naftali Bennett becoming prime minister with a very limited... On the other hand, anything is possible. We did have Yair Lapid. We had the very unpleasant precedent of having Yair Lapid as a prime minister with some very serious contortionist behavior by certain members of the Israeli Knesset. Certainly Naftali Bennett facilitated that with his total breach of trust with his electorate. And then we had a number of disasters, especially the ceding of sovereign territory in the Lebanon area, with no real debate, without it being challenged by the Supreme Court. So yes, sinister things can happen. But one hopes that the center of gravity has moved sufficiently to prevent that. But of course, we have to be watchful. We have to be very careful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are also talks of banning the Israeli sports team from the main competitions, which I think it's an absolute disgrace. They are claiming that Israel should be treated in the same manner as Russia was expelled. And I think there is no parallel between the two. But again, people are having a very, very hard time to connect the dots, and they will just believe that they are an equal monster. And if the media tells them that 10 times, that's enough for them to believe. We all know the power of repetition. How can that influence the public mindset?
Yes, I'd like to comment on that, because you do raise a very important point. Bear in mind, we have to understand the environment that we live in. If a World Cup can be awarded to a country like Qatar, this is not to be unexpected. Okay? What kind of a regime is Qatar? How did this happen that it was awarded the World Cup? Obviously, some very sinister movements must have taken place. Of course, we all know about the victims of the infrastructure enhancing process in Qatar. You have to understand, this is the world we live in. Okay.
Yep. Did you see that just talking of that region, the UAE are banning a few nationals from entering the country either as a tourist or as workers. So few countries now in Southeast Asia and in Africa are not welcome in UAE. This is not on the news. Like, imagine if Israel or some West European country, let's call it white country, would do it. It would be outrageous. I mean, we are all old enough to remember when Trump put in place this travel ban. It was all over the place. I know it's the states, and the states, by definition, receive a disproportionate amount of attention. But the UAE is not a small player. It's probably the biggest economy in the region, and it's everyone talks about Dubai, but when it comes to this topic, no conversation. And they are doing just that just to protect their own citizens, to make sure that there is some degree of normality in their everyday lives. They realize it's too much, and UAE relies on immigration. Actually, in my opinion, and maybe people are going to hate me for that, but UAE is an example that immigration works if it's controlled, if there is some sense in who is welcome, who is not.
But they don't become citizens. They don't become citizens. They're foreign residents.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay. They contribute. I mean, they pay very little taxes, but they get
right. No, but the analogy with Europe is different in the sense that the people ultimately become citizens. They vote. Yeah. They change the landscape. That is the problem in Europe. They become citizens. They influence what happens. They bend the architecture of the states which welcome.
Indeed, actually, it would be interesting to know how many in the UAE are actually eligible to vote, because I mean, as Marco says, this is how you safeguard a nation in many ways. I mean, you can compare this to sort of even Caribbean islands. Take, for example, the Turks and Caicos, which I don't know, probably awards maybe 1% of the people who are living on the island the right. These are belongers, those who are direct descendants of slaves. This is to prevent the influx of Haitian workers from voting and completely changing its governance in a way that would make them all much poorer. So it is Europe's big failure was to safeguard its population against an invasion, really.
So I quickly cross-checked here the election system in the Emirates, because I knew nothing about it, to be honest. And I'm just going to read it for you. This is Wikipedia. Okay, it is what it is. But they're saying parliamentary elections were held in UAE on 7th October 2023 to elect 20 of the 40 members of the Federal National Council. As political parties are banned in the UAE, all candidates run are independents. So that's a very different model from what we are used to.
I mean, they do have ostensibly a vote of some sort. It's just not one that we would recognize.
Yeah, just talking of election, there are people here saying that Catherine Konovich is right about Hamas, because Palestinians have a say and they accepted Hamas as their government. But what they forget is the last election was in 2005. These are 20 years, not 20 years without elections. So even though if they were elected, we need to remind people this was 20 years back, and there was no signs of the democracy since then. So
no, when was the last time? Well, indeed, when was the last time the Palestinian Authority? These elections, I think Abbas, every time one comes up, he sort of says, actually, no, we can't possibly do this right now. Yes. Yeah. And nor will Hamas willingly have free and fair elections.
Look, next time I see a youngster on the street protesting for Palestine, I'm going to ask him or her, or whatever is their gender, how old are they? What's their age? Because maybe since they are around, there were no elections in Palestine, because most of them are like 16, 17, 18, and that's a sign that they should study history.
And these people vote. These people vote as well. Was there talk about lowering the voting age in Britain?
They've already passed this.
It's so really. So at the next election, Keir Starmer,
16-year-olds.
Well, he won't be around. I doubt with him. 16, is it? Is it 16?
Mm-hmm. It's to bring it into line with Scotland. It's well, I'm sure by the time Labour leave office, we'll have 10-year-olds voting. Why not?
Why not? Why not?
I mean, if they can change gender, why they cannot vote?
Quite right. And although I actually, funnily enough, I think this might backfire, because as things get harder and harder for young people,
you are right.
I sense, and I'm not saying I'm, canvassing youth opinions on a regular basis, but I get a sense from younger people that this is the generation that's coming of age now. So I mean, the people turning 16, 17, 18, generation alpha, I guess. So they will in the next few years. I think they're a little bit more conservative and a bit more concerned about the future than their Gen Z and millennial peers.
Right. You actually, yes, it could work against him. There's something to what you say there. Yeah. It could work against these people who are so eager to farm these votes to reap the harvest. Yeah.
And on the other hand, they're making a lot of effort to shut down pubs and don't allow people to drink. So,
I think this was actually quite a hilarious one. Was they raised, what was it, the alcohol duty, which actually ended up costing the UK economy some absurd amount. It didn't actually end up raising any revenue for the Treasury at all. And I just thought this is just a sign of how badly run the country is right now. Just awful. I'd have to look that one up though.
So prohibition isn't coming in. Is that what you're telling me with regard to alcohol?
Wow.
They've tried that. They tried that one before. It backfired.
We'll see. We will see. I think the UK has some dark times ahead, and then maybe beyond that, things will get better. But things need to get worse before that can happen.
That seems to be the consensus among thinking people.
I think with that consensus, we can close. If you don't have any other or further thoughts for this morning.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me, and it was lovely to see and speak to you both again.
The pleasure is ours. The pleasure and honor is ours.
Thank you.
Always welcome.
It's an honor as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Shabbat shalom.
Take care. Shabbat shalom. Right. So we got some interesting insights on Britain and how is the country going down the hill from someone who is British, but I think she has the advantage of checking what's going on on England from far. So she knows the stuff, but she's not that much attached, which I think is a privilege. And she's quite bright. So I hope the viewers make the most of her input.
Indeed, yeah. It's some very interesting insights from Rachel, indeed.
Just before we close, we have someone asking us the $1 million question here, Marco. And we'll answer, just that the person will be satisfied for the weekend, Why support Israel over Palestine? They couldn't be more direct, on the question.
I can see a series of questions which basically.
I would just say to this person 3 things. Do you believe in democracy? Number 1. Do you believe in freedom of speech? Number 2. Do you believe in human rights? If you believe in those 3, then you'd rather support Israel.
So on the assumption
it's simple.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
On the assumption that's he. Mark, you need to be very careful with gender.
I see that. No. I see the line of reasoning. So it's anyway. Let's be serious. Right. So we'll be back on Sunday.
we will come up with a topic. We don't have a topic yet, so if the viewers want to propose one, we are more than welcome to take it in consideration. Because this is not just us, deciding what we do going forward. This is a dialogue, and we want the viewers to be part of it. So, if you want to suggest a conversation theme, just put it in the comments, and we can pick it up. If not, Sunday can be next week or the week after. So feel free to use the chat box for that purpose, and share if someone can benefit from this conversation. Even if they don't agree with some of the stuff that we declared today, we are happy to be challenged. And if you want to make us another favor, press that subscribe button below. And Marco, I see you in a couple of days.
Indeed.
Shabbat Shalom to you.
Shabbat Shalom.